Let me tell you a story. It's about how a massive global scandal over sweatshops didn't just tarnish a brand, it actually dragged Nike all the way to the US Supreme Court. And in the process, it ended up rewriting the rulebook for what it means to be a big, responsible company in our world today.
You know, the whole thing really boiled down to one single explosive question. When a company is under fire and it puts out press releases and ads to defend itself, is that just PR? Or is it actually free speech, protected by the First Amendment?
And this is what's so wild about this whole story. We're not talking about a newspaper or some political activist group here. This was about Nike. The highest court in the land was being asked to draw a major line in the sand, and they were using a multi-billion-dollar sneaker company as the test case.
Okay, so this slide really shows you the heart of the legal fight. On one side, you have commercial speech, basically advertising. Its goal is to sell you something, and because of that, it legally has to be truthful. But on the other side, you have public affairs speech, debating important public issues. That gets the highest level of protection there is. Nike was arguing their PR campaign was public affairs speech, but their critics, they said, no way, that's just false advertising to sell more shoes.
To really get how Nike even ended up at the Supreme Court, we've got to hit rewind.
See, the whole legal drama was really just the final chapter of a scandal that had been brewing for almost 10 years.
So Nike's business model back then was honestly revolutionary, and it was ruthlessly efficient. Part 1, outsource all your manufacturing to independent contractors in whatever country had the lowest labor costs. And if wages went up, you just pack up and move. Part 2, pour every penny you saved from that into massive, flashy marketing campaigns with superstars like Michael Jordan.
And when I say low cost, I mean unbelievably low. In the early 90s, reports started surfacing that workers in some of the Indonesian factories making Nike products were earning as little as $1 a day.
Now, put that $1 a day wage right next to the price tag on a pair of Air Jordans at the time. We're talking around $150. That staggering difference, well, that's what really grabbed the public's attention and just fueled this huge wave of outrage.
And it went way beyond just the low pay. Not even close. Journalists and activists were documenting this horrifying list of conditions at the factories. Abuse, dangerous chemicals, even underage workers. It painted this incredibly grim picture of what was really going into making those sneakers. So, what was Nike's response to all this? Well, this is the crucial part. At first, it was totally hands-off. They argued, hey, those aren't our factories, those aren't our employees. So they claimed they had zero legal or moral responsibility. This quote from their manager in Jakarta, it just perfectly sums up that early defensive attitude.
But, you can only play the denial card for so long. The press was relentless. Newspapers, TV, even popular comic strips were going after them. And eventually, all that bad press started to hit Nike where it really hurts any company, the bottom line.
And this chart, wow, it just illustrates the turning point perfectly. Look at this. You can see Nike's revenue climbing up and up year after year. And then boom, right here in 1999, it dips. This was at the absolute peak of the scandal, when big universities started canceling their multi-million-dollar contracts. For the first time, the bad press had a real, measurable financial impact.
That forced a massive change. In 1998, CEO Phil Knight got up and announced a whole series of sweeping reforms. They raised the minimum age for workers, they adopted American-level safety standards for air quality, they seriously ramped up their factory inspections, and they even started worker education and loan programs. It was a complete 180 from where they started.
So this whole Nike saga became the textbook case for a concept that pretty much dominates business discussions today: corporate social responsibility, or CSR. But what does that actually mean?
All right, first, let's bust a few myths. CSR is not just about being legal. The law, that's the bare minimum you have to do. Social responsibility is all about asking companies to go above and beyond what's legally required.
And it's also not based on the same kind of ethics that you or I might have. Like our duty to help someone who's in trouble? A company's #1 job is still to its shareholders, so the whole moral calculation is just different.
And let's be clear, CSR isn't about being altruistic or sacrificing your own interests. It's not about being a corporate saint. It's about being smart. It's about recognizing that your company's long-term health is directly tied to the health of the society you're a part of. So if it's not all those other things, what is it? Well, at its core, CSR is the idea that a business isn't just some island. It's an active citizen in its community, and it has a real role to play in making that society better, the very society that lets it succeed in the first place. Now, here's where this whole thing gets super interesting, because it is so complex. Take the wage issue, for example. If you look at this chart of wages in the local Indonesian currency, the rupiah, it looks pretty good, right? It looks like the workers' pay was steadily going up. From that perspective, things were improving.
But watch what happens when you convert those exact same wages to US dollars. Because of a massive currency crisis at the time, the actual value of their pay completely plummeted. This is such a brilliant example of the challenge of CSR in a global economy. What looks good on paper locally can have a devastating impact on a global scale.
So why would any company bother with all this complexity? Well, because in today's world, being socially responsible is just plain good business. It's what you'd call enlightened self-interest.
Basically, being responsible creates this amazing virtuous cycle. A good public image brings in more customers and attracts better talent. Better employees make better products, and all of that helps you avoid the kind of expensive boycotts and public backlash that almost brought Nike to its knees.
So, what happened with that big Supreme Court case we started with? Well, in a weird twist, the court basically punted. They dismissed the case without a major ruling and sent it back down to the California courts. At that point, instead of keeping up the fight, Nike just decided to settle. They paid $1.5 million to a workers' rights group to fund factory monitoring and improvement programs.
And the business result of all this? Take a look at this. After Nike fully embraced these social responsibility initiatives, their revenues didn't just bounce back from that 1999 dip, they kicked off a whole new era of massive, sustained growth. The turnaround was complete.
Which really leaves us with this one final thought. The whole Nike saga forces us to ask a really fundamental question about business today. In a world where information spreads like wildfire, what's the bigger threat to a company's survival? A temporary hit to its profits, or a permanent stain on its reputation?